What does story structure mean to you?
Story structure for me is it's essential, and yet at the same time, I try to ignore it, if that makes sense. With all this stuff I've talked a bit about, kind of like defy conventions or whatever. But I also do believe that as an artist, if you don't understand what those conventions are, what the structures are, then you're not defying them. You just don't know what you're doing if you don't follow them. And so I really did spend, read about it a lot, and have studied in terms of like story structure and the 3-act, the 5-act structure, all that type of stuff. And there's such a value to it. I mean, even if it's not obvious that it's there in a lot of films, it should kind of be there. And so I do follow that. Like this one, I feel like has like the traditional 5-act structure, just in a very loose way. And it's just, if you don't hit certain plot points by certain points, you're going to bore your audience. It's one thing to challenge an audience and to ask them to really commit themselves to a story. It's another to, force them to, wait forever for something to happen or to not give them something to cling on to narratively. So I do try to keep the audience's interest and attention in my mind when I'm maybe not the first draft, but as I'm editing and refining the script, I like to keep that audience perspective in mind. Like, okay, they have to watch this, so let me think about them now. And so that's where I think knowing the structure really comes into play, is just knowing the best way to reach those beats, hit those moments. I did say earlier, though, I'm not a big fan of character arcs, at least not obvious ones, because I feel like in real life, unless something traumatic happens to you, you don't actually change, you just adjust your... So for me, instead of worrying about a character arc, like, well, he starts here and he ends this person, or he finds this out of himself and changes here, I kind of like to create a personality type and a psychology, and then put them into a situation like, okay, now how do they cope with this? Because that's kind of more how we are in real life, is, I am who I am. If you put me in a burning building, I'm not going to suddenly turn into a hero. I'm probably going to flee. What circumstances would it take for me to become that hero? It would have to be for a loved one. My cats, depending on the day, maybe I would risk it. But that's, to me, is the interesting thing, is not necessarily like hitting the arc in the traditional way, but setting those plot points of like, okay, at this point, this character has this happen to him, and he does this, and then at this point he realizes, oh, this all backfired, and then so that's kind of how I like to follow the structure. Is like you have those points, but in terms of like so much of the traditional writing on story structure and everything, I'm not a fan of a lot of the guidance on how a story should develop. Obviously there's some very, very successful filmmakers that have followed those formulas and done quite well with it. So, take my opinion on it for what it's worth. I'm on my second film. We'll see how it does. So, but that's at least how I approach it personally.